Good evening. I'm Susan Welch, the Dean of the College of the Liberal Arts. And I'm really happy to have you all here tonight. Please let me know if you can't hear me or if I'm kind of faint back there in the back row. Well, our college, of course, is focused on providing with all of our students not only a quality classroom education, but opportunities to see their way to move from the classroom to the larger world when they graduate. So we want to provide you with that edge that goes beyond your classroom education and helps you visualize the life you would like to lead once you leave Penn State. So the women tonight represent liberal arts graduates who have combined the opportunities they had at Penn State with their own abilities to be very successful in their lives beyond Penn State. And we're really grateful that you're here to share your experiences. We have women who are relatively recent grads and women who have been out in the workplace for a couple of decades. I'd especially like to thank Benny Whittlesbach, our hostess for the evening. Okay, I guess I got through that.
You did.
Benny graduated from Penn State in 1985 with a degree in psychology. She's the president, director, and member of the executive committee of the Haverford Trust Company, a firm that specializes in investment management, trust, estate services, and retirement planning. She's also the vice president of Haverford Financial Services, and a couple of years ago, she was named by Barron as one of the top 100 women financial advisors. Benny is a member of our own Liberal Arts Alumni Board and serves on the boards of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the Caroline A. Buck Foundation. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and she'll be moderating, or she'll be introducing some of our other speakers. So Benny?
Thank you very much. Benny is my real name, and it's not short for anything, thank goodness, because Whittlesbach is way too hard to pronounce, let alone spell. Yeah. So thank you all for coming tonight. I have 2 college-age students, so I know how important time is, and for you to spend your time with us this evening is really wonderful. The way that we typically deem success, or I certainly deem success, is for you to walk out of here and be able to say affirmatively one of 3 things. 1, I met somebody that I might not have met had I not attended this evening. Or 2, I thought of something I hadn't thought of before. Or 3, I learned something. And if you're able to say yes to one of those 3 questions, you hopefully will be able to say, this was a good use of my time. Because one thing that we all have is that time is very precious, and it's an asset that once it's gone, you can't retrieve it. So thank you for spending your time with us. And I am so excited because I have the opportunity to introduce a very special person who really doesn't need a lot of introduction here at Penn State. And that's Sandy, the athletic director. And we had a chance to have dinner ahead of time. I said, Sandy, how many women are the head of a big athletic department like we have at Penn State? She said, well, do you want to know just the Big Ten or others? And she said, well, there's 3 of us. I said, 3? How about like when you expand the universe? So, well, if you include 128 of the biggest, most major programs, there's 7. Wow. So we are really lucky to have such a wonderful woman in leadership here at Penn State and to kick us off tonight. So Sandy.
Thank you, Benny. As I was thinking about my remarks for tonight, I was reading the bios of the panel that you're going to have the privilege of hearing in a few minutes. And I was kind of like, well, why do you need me? Why am I doing this? Because I think about them as Penn Staters and such great role models of what a Penn State education and with the opportunity, with the values that you have the opportunity to live within here at Penn State, what you they can then go out into the world and do. But I put a little pen to paper and thought about a couple of things I wanted to talk about, and then that you hopefully walk out of here with having heard something that's thought-provoking or new or learned something. And then I went to dinner with them. And it's about 10x what I had anticipated it was. So you're in for a real treat, which means I need to quickly go through my remarks here so that we can get to the panel. I was asked to talk a little bit about my background, and then maybe a little bit about leadership and a little bit about success. And so certainly it starts with my family. It starts with my upbringing, and yes, I was born in the 50s. Stop trying to do the math. It was the latter part of the 50s, the very, very latter part of the 50s. And I was fortunate to be born into a family with a father, in particular, that didn't really look at things so much from a gender standpoint. Now, interestingly enough, he was born in 1920, and he was a military man. Naval Academy graduate, and you would think those are things that would lead him to look at things from a male perspective and a male-only perspective. Not so much, although there was some evolution there for him. But you can imagine then why he had a daughter who maybe turned to sports, and a daughter who had a lot of aspirations that came from him. He was a war hero. But most importantly, he was my hero. He brought me up in a boy's world, in a man's world, but to not see that. So I had the advantage of things from small and large that have privileged me, if you will, as I've gone into the working world. Things as small as language, I knew the lingo, to things as large, from my perspective, as confidence. And there's so many things that we can read in the research about why participation in sports is important for women, but I lived it. And it's not about learning how to do a crossover dribble or learning how to be a good field hockey goalkeeper. It's about confidence. It's about teamwork. It's about collaboration. It's about all those things that will benefit us out in the working world. It's about resilience. We talked about resilience at dinner tonight as something that maybe we've forgotten, or that we've not thought about making sure that we've trained ourselves or learned resilience. Amongst many things that my dad instilled in me, two things I think have really stood out and helped me to have the kind of career success that I've been fortunate enough to have. One, the first and foremost, is he was very clear with me. Now, this wasn't because I was his daughter. This was because I was his child, and he would have instilled this in son or daughter, but that I could be anything I wanted to be. Now, it's important, particularly as a young woman, growing up in the 60s and the 70s and on into the 80s, that there were lots of things that, as you will hear from these ladies, there are lots of things that have been male-dominated, and particularly at that time were that maybe with less confidence and maybe with less support, I would not have had the guts, if you will, to go out and pursue. But the second was that you accomplished nothing alone. You can imagine from a military man, where that comes from. It's also kind of a coaching approach as well. But you accomplish nothing alone. It's all about people. I think Penn State is really a prime example of that. The connectedness that's here, the people, the networking that you can experience here. Which brings me to the importance of networking. I'm not talking about how many business cards you collect. I'm not talking about transaction. When you hear the term networking, I think a lot of times you think about going to a network event and how many people can I meet, how many business cards can I collect. That isn't networking at all. That's transaction. It's about relationships. And again, I bring it back to Penn State, and I bring it back to your opportunity tonight to hear this panel. It's about relationships. It's about people helping each other. It's about career advice. It's about, yes, reaching out, but it's also about a true connection and a true interest in what they have to provide in terms of information and guidance, and their interest in you. So, networking I think is really, really important. When you're talking about hiring, I think you'll hear it tonight, we hire people we know and that we know are talented. Now, before you jump off the way, you can't know everybody, you can't know all these people. You're right. But I don't hire people that I haven't found someone that I trust and know that knows them. I may not know them, but I have a way to them so that I'm not hiring anybody blind. All right? So that's why networking is very, very important. Ultimately, success is about being authentic. It's about persevering. It's about learning a work ethic. It's learned. It doesn't come naturally. It's about that perseverance. Being successful as a young female, I was the athletic director at Tulane University at the age of 36. I have no idea, looking back on it, what that was all about. That's impressive. But you know what? I wasn't afraid. I had the opportunity, I jumped off, and I did it. Had some success. But it was about kind of that young part of me and my dad saying, you can be anything you want to be. Deep leadership is about demonstrating values. It's about setting a vision for those that will follow. The other thing is about leadership is lead from where you are. You don't have to be at the top to lead within your organization. I think that's a myth that we buy into all too often. Qualities of a leader: empathy, integrity, loyalty to the organization. That's a really, really difficult one that I find sometimes. I find it here far more than any other place I've been, because there is so much loyalty to Penn State. But you want people in your organization that are loyal to and are going to do things that lead to the success of the organization, not to an agenda or to individuals. And then finally, one of the things I was asked was, what's my advice? What's my advice to a young woman getting out into the work world? Don't make being a woman a non-issue by not making it an issue. And I'm not asking you to, and I'm not suggesting that you abandon your womanhood at all. That's who you are. But I don't believe, I hope we're getting to a time where it doesn't have to be an issue. Learn to be a great communicator. It's very appropriate for tonight. Both your written communication skills and your presentation skills, no matter what it is, no matter what your passion is, and that's my next thing, do something you're passionate about. And no matter what it is, you need to be able to communicate the thoughts and ideas and your expertise, both in writing and in person. It's such a valuable thing. And then form your out values early and live by it. I think that that's something that's hard sometimes as a young person just starting out. But I think it's so important that you decide what's most important to you and stick to your guns. Make decisions about where you're going to go work and who you're going to work for and who you're going to work with that are around your values. And then be passionate about it. Find something you get up every morning that you love to do, because then your lifelong work will become your lifelong love as well. So thank you for the opportunity tonight to open this up. You're in for a real treat, and I'm in for a real treat, because I'm going to go take a seat right over there and listen to this. So
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandy. And it's really appropriate, as you talked about communication, that we have Denise Solomon as our moderator tonight. Denise is a professor in the College of the Arts, specializing in communication. She had been the associate dean with Dean Welsh, and is back to teaching, which we're all very lucky for. So Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, I feel so fortunate to be up here and with this impressive panel. And I want to start by congratulating you all for making a very smart decision to use your time by coming here tonight. It was quite clear in our conversation over dinner that one of the things that set these women apart from their peers is that they found opportunities and they took advantage of opportunities that were available to them that sometimes other people did not. And it's not always an easy choice to take the time out of your life to come and do something like this when we all know that you have other things that you could be doing right now. But you made a very smart choice, and I think you're going to benefit. I know you're going to benefit. So let me introduce your panelists and move us along here. I'll begin by introducing Sarah Woods. She's the Executive Director of Philadelphia VIP, which promotes equal justice for the poor by providing civil legal services not otherwise available. She majored in women's studies at Penn State, and we learned tonight that she was one of the first graduating classes of the major.
Yep.
So, trend-setting even then. Lauren Ridley is an attorney with the international law firm Morgan, Lewis & Bockius in Philadelphia, where she focuses on employment law. When she's not doing law, she's also apparently running marathons. She majored in psychology at Penn State, but one of the things you'll learn is that many of the panelists also picked up other degrees, minors and certificates while they were here, and so they really took full advantage of the educational opportunities that they had at Penn State. Kathy Casey is a senior advisor with Potomac Global Partners, a financial services consulting firm in Washington, D.C. At Penn State, she majored in foreign service, which is an earlier version of today's international politics major. Gretchen Burkle is the regional director for Africa with the International Republican Institute, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in Washington, D.C. It encourages democracy in places where it is absent, and it helps democracy become more effective in places where it is in danger. She also majored in foreign service and international politics at Penn State. And then you've heard already about Vinnie, our host tonight. Thank you for inspiring us to hold this Women in Leadership program in the first place. We appreciate your leadership, your volunteer work for Penn State, as well as other organizations, and for hosting tonight's panel. So I'm very much looking forward to the conversation tonight, and we will get things started. To begin, I would to give you a chance to hear from each of the panelists. Do you want me to be a little louder? Okay. I'll give you a chance to hear from each of the panelists. Once they've shared their career stories with us, we'll open the floor for questions from you. So I have a couple of questions that I'll ask to get us started, but the evening belongs to those of you who made the smart choice to be here. So be thinking about the questions that you want to ask the panelists, and we will turn to those as soon as we're able. So to begin, I would like each of the panelists to share with us an overview of their career. We'd love to know what activities you engaged in as a student or early in your career that sort of prepared you for leadership. And also, if you will, share with us the events or the people who were the biggest influences in your career or your leadership style. So I think we will begin, if we can, Gretchen, with you at the end of the table and work this way.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you, Vinnie. Thank you, Denise and Dean Welsh. It's an honor to be here. I'm very excited to be back on campus. So I'll give you a quick overview of my career path here. I was very fortunate in high school that I knew I was going to focus on international affairs and most likely Russian studies. It was an early dream of mine. And so when I was looking for universities, Penn State was a very good fit for that. Upon graduation, I moved home to Connecticut and ended up teaching for a year. I was job hunting, but an opportunity came to teach, which I jumped at. I was very excited about that. And then after that year ended, I moved to Washington, D.C. to begin a job hunt in earnest. My very first job then was with Johns Hopkins University. I was a program assistant in their government affairs office. Now, growing up, I had had this dream about going to Tufts University for my master's. I was from New England, and it was always Tufts, and I thought, wouldn't that be exciting? But by the time I moved to Washington, D.C., and started to work at Johns Hopkins, a school I actually didn't know much about, I decided I would enroll there for graduate school. So I ended up earning my master's in Russian studies from Johns Hopkins SAIS, and I've stayed in Washington ever since. Upon graduating, one of my classmates, who was the year ahead of me, told me about a position she was leaving. It was for a startup magazine called Export Today, but it was something that would give me the opportunity to write and to publish articles. And it was a little bit risky, but I decided to give it a chance. And I was able to work there for a few years and wrote on investments and business opportunities in the former Soviet Union. Well, it was a startup, and unfortunately, it ended up ending rather quickly. So I then switched tracks and worked for a public affairs firm in Washington, Ogilvy and Mather. And I was doing energy and environment work, which I loved. I'm sort of passionate about the environment, and I spent a good 4 years there doing that. However, my longing to do international work was still there, and although we had tried to secure more international clients, that wasn't happening. Eventually, I had a tip for a job on Capitol Hill, working actually with a senator from Pennsylvania, Arlen Specter. And that was doing his international affairs work, and so it was a fantastic opportunity. So I worked on Capitol Hill for 2 years. Now, if you know any history about senators and Congress, Senator Specter was pretty tough. So that 105th Congress, those 2 years were pretty challenging, and I decided this wasn't the position for me. One day, I'm looking at a newspaper on Capitol Hill called Roll Call, and I see an ad in the newspaper for something called the International Republican Institute to do democracy and governance work in the former Soviet Union. I had no idea what this organization was. I had no idea what democracy and governance work was. I wasn't at the time so interested in international development, but I decided to give it a try. And one thing led to another, and I ended up getting that job, and I've now been there 15 years. I started with the Eurasia Division, but things changed over the course of 15 years, and sometimes I took some lateral positions to gain some more skills that I thought were important. And eventually, I'm now the Africa Director, which is very, very exciting for me. So 2 points I would like to make from that, Denise, that I think I could really take away from this experience, and I would like you to consider as well, is that it pays sometimes to take risks. I mentioned the startup magazine position, and then also my current job working for an organization I'd never heard of before. But both of those, especially the magazine, I think really gave me some important skills and some time to really practice my writing. And then the second factor I would point out is that sometimes it pays to go lateral. You know, I took some parallel positions in my current job to gain more regional exposure, to learn some different and new skills in different parts of the world, to now that I'm at a nice senior position in the organization. So I just wanted to highlight those 2 factors for you. I think looking back on some opportunities I have had to develop leadership skills, something that really came to my mind here at Penn State was, and Dean Welsh, I'm not sure if you know about this or if this even still exists, but in 1984, there was a student-run course in the liberal arts college. And so actually students were allowed to come together and run their own course. And so a group of us did that, and it was 1984, and so we read George Orwell's 1984 and had a whole semester course on that, sort of self-taught, and it was just an extraordinary experience. And I think really that was probably the first time that I had true responsibility in that kind of capacity. I mean, we were talking grades for students and a semester of work, so I just wanted to highlight that as well. On individuals, I really like Sandy's comment about her father, because I grew up in the same sort of background, and my father is retired Navy as well. He raised 4 daughters, believing they could do anything they want. In fact, to this day, I think my father still thinks I will be Secretary of State one day. So don't want to spoil his fun on that one. But I think that's very important, to really believe that we can do whatever we really want to do. I have been fortunate. I can pinpoint 4 people throughout my life who really have opened doors for me. And it really began in high school, sort of one woman, a coach, in fact, who introduced me to a friend of hers who was in the Foreign Service. And that really opened my eyes to careers in international affairs. And I think starting from her on the way up, I've just benefited from the fact that people were willing to open some doors. And so I would encourage you all to seek out those folks who might open some new opportunities for you.
Thank you.
So we'll move down the table. Kathy?
Great. Thanks so much, Denise. I think what's really neat about this panel is that I know I always learn something about all the other great people that are sitting here. And what I think you're going to find is there's a lot of commonality. I was struck by Sandy's story, and also Gretchen, with respect to the influence of their family, and my father in particular. Also, my father was an Air Force officer, and so he was in the Navy before he went into the Air Force. But again, like them, I was taught at an early age that that anything was possible, and my worldview was framed in a very international way. I took 2 things away from both of my parents: independence, the concept of independence from my mother, and the concept of integrity from my father. And those are the 2 primary motivators behind how I've sort of tried to conduct myself and develop my professional career. So I'm very, very grateful for them in terms of opening up how I think about what I can do in this world. So it was very values-driven. I always thought I wanted to do something important in this world, wanted to make a difference. I was drawn to the international field. I thought about law, public policy, foreign service. And again, this was, I think you're also, I was saying at dinner, you're a product of your environment. So at the time, it was during the Reagan era, so I was also drawn to Soviet studies or Russian studies. I didn't discover that until my junior year. I had some extra credits, I had extra time. I thought maybe I should try something new, take Russian. My father said, "That's crazy, you'll ruin your GPA." And I said, "You know what? No, I'm gonna do this." I loved it, I got an A in the language. I proved to myself I could do something. It was very satisfying. Unfortunately, unlike Gretchen, I didn't take that. Education and put it to good use. Although I'd note when I was working in, I was in law school. I'll talk about how I got to law school. But I was in my 3rd year in law school, and I had a little extra time. And I thought, I should go back and take Russian. And so the Department of Agriculture does these courses you can take. Sure. And so I said, yeah, I'll go back and refresh. It's only been, not so many years. They still had the same textbook, which was produced in the 1950s. And I went for the first class, and I never came back. It was really hard. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, it's going to take a lot more time. But I was struck by the fact that they were still using the same textbook that we had here. So stepping back a little bit, when I ended up finding myself coming to Penn State, I grew up, finished my high school years outside of Annapolis, where I learned tonight that Sandy also did as well. And Penn State is just really big in the area, and I was so struck. I actually met a recruiter who came to our high school, and I was so impressed with her, and I thought, that's really where I want to go. And I'd gone to one other booth, it was Vassar, and I remember going home to my mother, and I told her, I'm going to go to Vassar. And she's like, good luck with that. You're going to go to Penn State. And I was lucky to get into Penn State. I took advantage of being here. I was involved in the college newspaper here, the Daily Collegian. I was on the Daily Collegian. I joined a sorority. I was involved in the College Republicans. We were a group of about 4 at the time, but very worthwhile getting involved politically because I was drawn to that. And again, tried to take advantage of all the wonderful opportunities here at the university. I always thought I might want to go to law school. When I graduated, I took 2 years off and went and I worked at a law firm just as an assistant, an administrative assistant. I wasn't going to have some highfalutin job. I just gotten out with my BA. but it was an excellent job. I learned very quickly that I did want to go to law school, and I ended up going to law school full-time in Virginia at George Mason University, and very much enjoyed that, and found that I discovered I didn't really want to practice law. I enjoyed the discipline of learning the law, the skill set, the analytical skill set that came with it, but I was really drawn to public policy and the political world. And so I was very, very fortunate, perhaps almost like Gretchen was. I had a social circle, a network of friends that I had developed. And one of the people that I socialized with worked on the Hill. And as I was getting ready to graduate from law school, he said, I have an opening. Would you be interested in coming up and working for a senator? And I thought, absolutely, that sounds fantastic. And so I found myself with a tremendous opportunity to work with people that I liked and respected, and which ultimately turned out to be one of the most important decisions I ever made, because those relationships have continued to serve me today in terms of the network Sandy was talking about earlier, that has opened up other doors for me later in my career. I worked on Capitol Hill for Senator from Alabama, Richard Shelby, for 13 years, and we'll talk maybe a little bit later about this in terms of, working in an environment where it might be more male-oriented, certainly certain fields like financial services. I think in the public sector it's a little different, but like Sandy, I never thought of myself as a woman. I was very much motivated by policy. That was a common interest. I wanted to work hard. I would do whatever I had to do. No job was too small. I was really driven to be, to really make a difference and to impress and to have my work be what was valued and respected. And I felt I had to earn that. That was really, very important to me. So I was very fortunate. I had a boss and other senior I can't even think of the word, my supervisors, who were both men, but they turned out to be mentors for me. And I had a senator who respected strong and smart women. And so when there were other opportunities to work on the banking committee, he said, why don't you go over and be the staff director of the banking committee? I was his chief of staff, I was his legislative director, so in every opportunity, I was able to rise up through the ranks, and I learned a lot in doing that. So again, I would say that I hope to think that I earned a lot of those opportunities, but I don't discount that sometimes luck has a lot to do with it as well. Maybe you make your own luck, but I was extraordinarily fortunate to work with just superb individuals, superb people who respected you no matter what. And again, ended up developing lifelong friendships that I still cherish today. I wanted to come back to some of the lessons I learned in terms of how to be more effective as a leader. And there are a couple of experiences that I have really are very tangible to me. And I think, again, drawing back to the dinner we had, Sandy was saying something about how you learn and you grow through failure. And you really need to be able to fail. And I had a couple of experiences that I, without doubt, know have made me a better person and a better leader, I hope. One was when I was given the opportunity to take on greater responsibilities in managing a staff in a senator's office. I was still very singularly focused on, everybody just do your job, do it well. You don't need anything else much more from me. Just, here's the task, do it. And I ended up finding out within a very short order, I would hire the legislative staff. And there was a young man, you have a lot of ambitious people that want to work on the Hill, very smart, but very ambitious people. And I'd heard that he was saying negative things about me on the outside. And I was shocked and very hurt. And I could have negatively affected his career as his superior if I wanted to. But what I did is I thought, you know what? What does it say about me? What can I learn from this? What can I do better if I'm not helping him achieve his objectives and he doesn't feel that he's being valued? And so we ended up sitting down and talking about what we could do more to build a stronger relationship, and one where I could give him more opportunities to excel, and we could build a greater relationship of trust and confidence. And I'm pleased to say that after all these years, we are still excellent friends. And I'm so glad that I chose to take that route, because I learned a lot from it. And I know that he's highly successful, more successful than me. So he obviously had something going on that I recognized. But that was something, again, when you have choices like that in terms of how you handle something that you take very personally, but not blaming somebody else for those actions and taking some responsibility for them and hopefully learning from them. So that's the one. And then the other was, when I first came to the Senate, I really thought, I was a firebrand. I was very, wanted to make a difference. And I thought I'd just come in and, sort of shake up the world. And I learned very quickly that you can't do that alone. And was schooled very early on trying to be successful within a very diverse and a very challenging environment. So you have people with all different kinds of agendas. And so what I ultimately learned over time in terms of being successful in achieving a very specific agenda is you have to develop alliances, you have to find common interests, start from common interest, build on small success so that you can work on bigger problems. That took several years to ultimately learn. But by the time I finished my last job in the U.S. Senate, I was the staff director of the Senate Banking Committee. And that was still probably one of the most rewarding jobs I ever had, because we passed every bill out of that committee 20-0, with the exception of one, which we just agreed to disagree on. And to this day, people still look back at that point in time and say, you know what, that is the model for collaboration. That is the model for still thinking back all of these years and saying, not only did we work for, we hope, good policy ends, but we developed lifelong personal and professional relationships that are still serving us today. So again, I think it just reinforces some of the things that you've already heard and you'll continue to hear tonight, which is in really, I think, building relationships and coming from a very collaborative approach, I think, is more likely to be successful over time, because those relationships will come back to serve you. Because Sandy said, you don't succeed alone. Absolutely, your own effort will have a lot to do with it, but truthfully, it takes a lot of people to help you ultimately succeed in achieving your objectives. So I'll just stop with that.
Thank you, Kathy and Lauren. We'd love to hear your story.
All right. Hi, everybody. First, I want to kind of reiterate something that Denise said and really congratulate each of you for taking time out of your schedule. It's a Thursday night in college. There's many fun things you can be doing, sure. Or there's many very serious academic things you could be doing as well, and you chose to show up here and be present. And I can't tell you how important taking these little steps really can benefit you, maybe next week, maybe next month, next year. And I'll tell you about my story, which showing up to something like this over 10 years ago literally has led me to the position that I currently am in. So you should never discount what you're doing today, never miss an opportunity. And that does involve so much more than just showing up and being here. But it takes that extra effort, which I think so many of you would be happy to do. Sometimes it just is a matter of someone telling you maybe to do it. But I want you to really sit back, and I hope you appreciate all of this and really follow through with so many of our suggestions, because we're really happy to be here and help you. And I hope that you take our stories to heart, because I think that everyone here probably has such great potential that, let us help you basically achieve that. And I can tell you, as many of these women have also said, that much of my motivation, much of my leadership started with my family as well. Some of you might have seen my mom is actually here tonight because she's a Penn State alum. So I had some Penn State alums in my family, which led me here. And I walked in the door thinking, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. I'm here with 40,000 other students. I'm from this really small town. The world was my oyster, truly. And then it's a matter of finding out who you are and what you are in this big university. Can be really challenging and really difficult. And it was through, many calls to mom saying, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And also really getting involved and making Penn State yours and finding out who you are here and letting all of the opportunities come by you and see what it is that you want to do and the best opportunities that you can take to shape who you are. Whether or not you want to go to this club one day and you decide you don't want to go next week because that wasn't really for you, or you want to do one semester and not the next, take advantage of those opportunities and those experiences, because for me, that is the only way that I learned my mishaps, my mistakes, what I would like to do, what I wouldn't like to do. And that's something that you're going to do in college, and you're going to do after college, and you're going to do much after college. You're probably going to do that for the rest of your life. So the best thing you might be able to do now, which I found very helpful, was to get comfortable with that and get comfortable with showing up and trying things out and failing at them and coming back or trying something new and never giving up. So saying that, I think I came to Penn State and had about 3 different majors, ultimately choosing on psychology because, hey, I had no idea what I wanted to do and thought a BA in psychology leaves me with so many options. I ended up graduating with a BA in psychology with a concentration in business administration and a minor in international studies. So I was really all over the place. But what that enabled me to do was to take classes in the College of Liberal Arts, take international courses, study abroad, and then also take classes in the Smale College of Business to take the broadest educational experiences I could basically get my hands on. That's not for everybody. That's what worked for me, and I'm quite happy with it. I certainly did not know I wanted to go to law school when I came into Penn State. But again, it was about trying and failing and trying and not liking and figuring it out what you do like. I took an internship at a small law firm while in college, and I really, really liked it, to my surprise. I took another internship the next summer in more of a business role doing finance work. I really, really did not like it. Much better to obviously find that out before you are graduating and that's where you're ending up. So for going into both of those, I had no idea. I had no idea if I was going to like it or if this is what I wanted to do, but I took the chance and tried them out. And again, that's something I did then, and it's something I'm still continuing to do and have done over the past 10 years. And what you like today and what you like 5 years from now, this will always be evolving. And I think that's something that you just want to set yourself up now and always think in the present moment, what can I be doing now to make sure that I will be in the best situation in the future, whether that's in a year or 5 years from now? What can I do, no matter what, that will be for the betterment of me? And I can say, looking back at my time at Penn State, there were a couple, I would say 3 particular things that I took advantage of that really, truly shaped my career. The first and probably the most important to me is the College of Liberal Arts Mentor Program that I joined up when I was a sophomore. I think it was the first year that the Liberal Arts College offered it, and I had no idea what it was. I saw a flyer, and I showed up. And I met my mentor, and we did hit it off. We still talk over 10 years later and have a wonderful relationship, and he's kind of helped me along the way. Coming into your sophomore year, for instance, and thinking you might know what you want to major in, doing something like the mentor program was absolutely invaluable to me, because there's so many unknowns that you have as a student about what classes you should take, what job you should take right after college, but if you don't like it. And having somebody like a mentor who's been there, who's done it, was so helpful in just picking up the phone and asking what classes I should take, or picking up the phone when I was freaking out about an exam or an internship that I didn't get. And the wisdom and advice that someone like an alumni can perhaps give you is truly something that I took to heart. And I can tell you without a doubt in my mind that if I didn't do that mentor program and didn't have a mentor that I engaged with, that I used him as a wonderful resource, I would not be where I am today, and I would not have taken this trajectory at all. I was lost and might have just floated along and done just fine, I'm sure, but having something like that really kind of sets a fire under you and helps you, I think, develop into an adult in the sense of responsibility and accountability, more so than you might not get as without something like that. The second thing that I think really helped develop me and made me comfortable as a leader was my role as a Thon captain. And many of you are probably involved in Thon. Maybe you are committee members or captains yourself. But I can say that transitioning from a committee member, which I was for a couple years, to a captain was the, I would say, pinnacle moment of becoming a leader and really understanding what it takes to be a true leader. You are not only accountable to yourself anymore and your grades or whatever it is you want to do, but you have committee members that you're accountable to. You have your co-captains that you're accountable to, and the greater good of Thon, obviously. I was a hospitality captain, so that involves a lot of the organization of the weekend and how you're going to meet all of the dancers and families' needs for the entire weekend. And it taught me skills that I think were probably there, but it tweaked them and brought them out. And I certainly made mistakes, and that's what all of this is about, really. And your time at Penn State is about figuring out, right, how to make those mistakes now and learning from them, because overall this is a holistic education that you're getting here. I learned so much about myself and what my strengths and weaknesses were in taking on a leadership role such as that. I learned that I was really organized, and I didn't know that I was really organized. I learned that, I really could use better management skills when I was dealing with so many committee members. Wanting to be their friend rather than their leader. You learn a lot about yourself, and things like that are enable you to get some self-reflection, I think, are opportunities that don't happen that often, but you should really take advantage of if you can, because they're very helpful. And then the last one, which was kind of a fun one that I think I gained a lot of leadership experience in, is studying abroad. I was terrified to go abroad. I was terrified to leave the country and leave everything I knew in this wonderful place of Penn State for 6 months. I traveled to Rome with no one I really knew, a couple of Penn Staters, but it was a broader program for people all over the country. And I think the first week there, in all honesty, I cried every single day thinking, why am I here? Like, this is so different. I want to just go home. I want to go back to Penn State. And it's in those moments of uncomfortability, risks, things you're really, really scared of, but you stick it out and you get through it. And the day that I left Rome was one of the saddest days of my life. And the person that I actually date now is someone that I met in Rome. So it was a wonderful thing that, everything happens for a reason. But after college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I moved to DC. I got a job at a law firm working as a legal assistant paralegal. I worked there for 2 years and thought, yes, I definitely want to go to law school, but I still have no idea what I want to do. So I went to Temple Law in Philadelphia, relocated, and kind of came back into this school mentality of, okay, now I'm back again. I have no idea what I want to do. All of this is new. All of this is scary. I left Penn State and was 4 years. I'm a senior. This is great. I had some credibility at my job after 2 years. You leave that and you go back to this place of uncomfortability. And doing this, say, a third or fourth time, you gain confidence in all of these experiences that you go through. So when I was back at law school, initially the thought was, I'm terrified. I don't know anybody. I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone seems so smart. I'm so uncomfortable. but you remember moments that you've had that you felt like that before, and how you develop strengths and resiliences and learn so much about yourself, and you're able to apply them then to a new situation. So it was wonderful to be able to jump into law school really after getting over my initial freak out my first week, head first and saying, this is what I want to do, and I'm passionate about it, and I want to sit here and I want to be engaged, and doing things such as law review and the editorial board of law review and running our write-on competition and becoming fully engrossed in whatever it is that you're doing and mastering that and doing it to the best of your ability is something that you will only be able to master through experiences and through failing and getting back up and trying all over again and realizing that you can be the best. Like, you have this wonderful position, and you're still going to make mistakes, or there's always going to be things that you do better. And I think that being confident in what you're doing and knowing that it's the best that you can be doing at the moment is key. And also communication, as Kathy said, is you have to be able to communicate with whoever your co-leaders might be, whoever your senior individuals might be, and especially the people that are working for you. Learning how to not be a dictator and learning to communicate with them, and that will become invaluable. And to take your own experiences into account as to when a boss might have been really wonderful or a boss might have been really not so wonderful, and how that can shape you as a person. I know that when I was sitting in your position, I discounted a lot of my prior experiences, for instance, as being a waitress in our local restaurant.
Critical.
And look, I was talking to my mom, reflecting on this today. Actually, I was like, my job in high school and actually part of college really shaped me as a leader, because I did go up, the ranks a couple years and had people below me, and you take those moments for granted, but you should kind of sit back every now and then and reflect on, maybe you're young. I think this about myself sometimes, like, I am only this old, and, why am I even up here with these amazing people? But you've done things, and every single thing that you've done to get you to this point has made you who you are, and you should really take that in stride and be confident about those experiences and use those to your advantage. So this is a silly thing, but it's when you are at things like this, you don't know who you're going to meet. And I can say that back to joining the mentor program here at Penn State, I have a wonderful mentor who I said I still speak with today. But it was actually a separate dinner that I was sitting next to my mentor and someone else who was there to be a mentor to somebody else. And I ended up just fully engaging with everybody at our table, and we were talking, and it was wonderful. And, we all love Penn State and this and that. And the man next to me was a lawyer, and we got to talking, and over the years, going to different Penn State alumni events and liberal arts events, we would run into each other, and I always made it a point to say, like, hi, how are you, and really just talk to him. And I got to know his wife's name and what his son was doing, and always just make a point. And it wasn't forced. It was generally, I really like this guy, and I know he's a lot older, and he might think that I'm, maybe not someone he wants to talk to when he's up here for a weekend, but he seemed open to it, and I really liked, talking to him. So over the years, after Penn State, I just made a point to continue to drop him a line every now and then, here and there. And he was a lawyer in Philadelphia, and I moved to Philadelphia for law school and let him know. And that's all. It was nothing too involved. Just something to always keep in the back of my mind. And actually, during law school, I interned for the general counsel of Blue Cross, where I decided I think that I would really like to do benefit-like work. So then in my, Blue Cross had a policy, they don't hire anyone right out of law school, so I was back looking for a job during my third year of law school, and I thought about who I can reach out to. Actually, the general counsel of Blue Cross told me that when you're looking for a job, or really any position, one of the best things you can do is build your board of directors is what he calls it. As Cindy was saying, you need to have your network. You need to know who you know. And you should think about people in your life that you can put on your board of directors and reach out to. You know that they will work in your best interest and they will be wonderful resources for you. This might look like a total smattering of different people across your lives, but that's what I started to do when I was in my third year of law school. I started to arrange my board of directors. One of the men I reached out to his name's Joe Costello, and he was the man I met when I was 18 years old sitting at a liberal arts dinner. I told him my situation, and he said, let's get a beer. So we met for happy hour in Philadelphia, and we went through everything. I showed him my resume. He said, all right, well, we're done hiring at Morgan Lewis for next year, but I'll send it to our benefits group, and maybe they have something, because, I'm not going to leave you hanging. We're going to get through this. And I thought, I can't believe this man who's a partner in this firm is going to help me. But we had developed a relationship over 10 years. He was a fellow Penn Stater. He attended things like this, and people like us and like him want to be there and will remember you 10 years from now if you and I continue to engage. He sent my resume to the employee benefits group. They brought me in for a ridiculous 4-hour interview. And I left the interview with them saying, we already hired, we already put in our budget for next year. It basically doesn't look good, but, we'll be in touch. So I didn't hear from them for weeks and weeks and weeks. Along the way, they're like, oh, can we have a writing sample? Can we have another writing sample? Can we get your grades again? But anyways, the day before my finals started my third year of law school, and my practice group leader called me up and offered me a job, and I've been there now. I'm a third year associate. And the only reason I have this job as a third year associate in the biggest law firm in the world at this moment is because of a man that I met when I was 18 years old through the mentor program, who I simply sat down and had dinner with and continued to drop him an email every other year and asking how he and his wife were doing. So really take advantage of the people you meet, take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you, because they could be a fleeting moment or they could really impact where you end up, as you're encroaching on 30 or 40 or 50. So I hope that sits with you throughout tonight and throughout the rest of your time at Penn State.
When you hear and read about where these women are, it seems obvious that they had it all mapped out from their freshman year. And so I'm just really interested, Sarah, how was it all mapped out for you?
Right. I wish. Although there's certainly themes here, right? I'm not from military, but I moved 8 times when I was a kid, so that counts, right? Yeah. Same difference. And I failed a heck of a lot. So I ran for class president my senior year of high school and lost to a man who danced, as opposed to a lovely speech that I spent hours on, right? All these failures have sort of shaped where I am today. And certainly no clear path, although I think I was told when I was in 3rd grade that I had a big mouth and so I should be a lawyer. So I did. And I'm sure, yes, lots of folks who, especially women, who speak their mind are told to go to law school, and it actually works out very well for us. So what's my career path? I always wanted to work in service. That was sort of instilled early on. So I started volunteering very young, and at Penn State continued to do that. I was a line ambassador, which I think still exists, along with the Blue and White Society, right? I think there's multiple of us. So walking backwards is a great skill. And I started a student group here for women's studies majors because there were only 3 of us, and we needed to get together and forge a path that wasn't forged yet. So those sort of all impacted what I was doing. But 2 things that I really would recommend for anybody, and certainly helped me, is working in retail or as a server. All certainly help us become leaders, because you learn how to treat other people, right? It's about relationships. So those are big. So those all sort of impacted my work, and then I graduated after Penn State and worked as a therapist at a rape crisis center, which was transformative, and wanted to continue to give back, and those clients had a profound impact on my life. So I went to law school and worked with domestic violence victims after law school. Again, very powerful, but I didn't love getting yelled at every day by judges. So I went to university after that and did career counseling for students who wanted to do what I did when I practiced. And then ended up at VIP 8 years later, because my first volunteer experience as a lawyer was with VIP, and I continued to volunteer. So all those connections helped. I love my work. It's great. It's great work. It's very powerful work. It's very hard work. I don't think I'll be there forever, so I'm not sure what the next step is, which many of you are sort of feeling right now, and I think all of us feel at some point in our careers, that we're not sure what the next step is, but I know that this is where it is. This is right for right now. Biggest influences you asked also were my dad, no question, and moving. Moving so much. You learn to take risks, and you learn how to talk to people, and recognize that y'all put your pants on the same way everybody else does, no matter what language you speak, and that you can always find some commonality with folks. So developing those relationships and being able to talk to people is a key to my success, if that's what you put it. Anyway, I know we're short on time, so that's enough about me.
Your considerable success. So, Benny.
So, one of the things Dean Welsh didn't tell you is that I actually did not start at Penn State. I started at a small school in Ohio, where I went there because they had a great theater program, and I was going to major in math. And I played varsity field hockey, basketball, and lacrosse, and I was so happy after my freshman year. I had boys in my class for the first time ever, and I was away from home and traveled all around to every small school in Ohio and eastern Indiana and southern Michigan. And by my sophomore year, I thought, oh my God, I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere with no means to escape, and I need something completely different. College should be much more than just this. And so I went to the other end of the spectrum by coming to Penn State, which, by the way, I visited on a 32-degree raining day in February for the first time, and I still thought the campus was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. So you know you really like school if it's raining when you come. And I got here, and I did not know one person. And so what I tried to do to get involved immediately was to try to do sports. Now, I was not going to be redshirted while, so I did club and intramural sports, which was a lot of fun. So Sandy, does that mean I still have 2 years eligibility left?
Absolutely.
Right.
So I played sports, and I got involved with community activities, which was things that I continued to do when I graduated from Penn State, and I still do today. And I think that those are two really important things for everybody to do, and helped me to be the leader from a number of different standpoints. And that, number one, I think if you're physically fit, it helps you to be mentally fit as well. But number two is when you do a lot, and I do a lot, besides working at a job that I've been at for 23 years, and I've been the president for the last 7 years. And the math will tell you I was promoted to president in April of 2008. So that was right before the financial crisis, thank you very much. And I've 2 adult children who are in college, as I had mentioned before. And I still run, and I play golf, and I'm still involved in the community, and I still do a lot of things. And what's really important about that is when you do a lot of things, is that you have to be very organized. You have to plan, you have to think ahead, you have to anticipate if you want to be able to do everything and you want to do it well. And the third thing that everyone's talked about, and certainly Sandy talked about earlier, is building that network. And it's building the network not only for yourself, but also to connect other people to other people. Because if you're able to introduce somebody and help them out, that's going to come back in spades to help you out at some point later in time. And it's really fun to be able to connect people together and have it work out really, really well. So, but I didn't know if we want to hear some questions from the audience, or you want to ask more questions?
Right, thank you. So let me just turn to the Q&A, let me ask for a show of hands of people who are sitting on questions right now that they are interested in asking. I have a couple, but I don't want to. All right, well, get your questions together while the panel is addressing a first question that I have. So I'm going to address this to Benny and Kathy, and it follows up on a theme that Sandy already raised. So you're both succeeding in male-dominated field of high finance. And so I'm interested, and I share with the audience, how do you navigate the challenges that exist in that kind of career situation?
Well, like Sandy, if you look at wealth management firms, in the Haverford Trust Company that I manage, we have over $8 billion in assets under management, and there are 88 employees, and we are wealth advisors. Less than 10% of them are have a female as the president or CEO. So I can understand and appreciate that there are very few women leaders in that area. And I've been asked, well, how did you get there? What did you do differently? And I'd say there are two things. One is that from the very start of my career, I pretty much have come to work 30 to 90 minutes before everybody else. And I've done it almost every single day. And when you accumulate that and you put that little extra time in, that makes a massive amount of difference. So whether you're going to be more well-read, or you're going to be more prepared, or you're going to follow up better, having that extra time makes a big difference. And the second thing is it's really important to speak up and advocate for yourself. No one's going to do it for you. I remember really well, I had been working for about 2 years. I had started out in a bank in Philadelphia in a management training program. And most of my friends had become branch managers at small little branches in Chester and Montgomery County. And I was working in Philadelphia, and the branches were much bigger. And one of the branches in our system had opened up for a branch manager, and I had been the assistant manager at the Broad and Walnut Street branch, which is now a Banana Republic. And I thought that, of course, at 24, I was the prime choice for the Ballot-Kinwood office. And I heard that they were considering a manager from a far-out branch to bring her in to manage that office. And I, went to the guy who was dating at the time, and I was like, just absolute apoplectic. I could not believe that I was not being considered. And he said, well, why should you? And I said, because I work really hard. I deserve it. And he said, now, wait a second. Why do you think you deserve it? And I ran through and I said, well, if you compare the Broad and Walnut Street branch in terms of our staff size, in terms of our consumer loans, and size of our commercial loans, and if you look at what I did in business development, and I know how to run the budget, and this and that and the other thing, he said, great, write it down and go make your case. And I did. I made an appointment. I went in to see the regional manager, and I look back on this now and I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And I walked in and I told him why I was the #1 choice for that office, and I got the job. And but those are things you have to do. Is you have to speak up. No one is going to advocate for you, but you also have to say why, not just because I'm smart and I work hard, but really, well, what has that gotten you?
Kathy, do you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Benny said, certainly with respect to maybe working harder in some respects, preparing in advance, really engaging in the kind of diligence that you hope will make a difference for you, when you're in situations where it can be, to be honest with you, quite daunting. I think it may be different, developing a career through a bank. I came from a different sector. I came from the public sector, again, where I think to some degree it's been, it's not as dominated, I think, from a male perspective. But I will say that coming into when I worked, I left a small piece out of my my background. When I left the Senate, I went to work at the Securities and Exchange Commission, And I had the opportunity to represent the SEC in international forums. So I represented the SEC at what is the International Organization of Securities Commissions, and I was actually the chair of one of the committees. And then I also represented the SEC and that organization in the Financial Stability Board. And the Financial Stability Board is basically a group of central bankers and finance ministers and other international organizations from around the world. And most of them are about 70. And I would think with the exception of one woman from India, that was it. I was the only other woman. And so I had both a gender and an age issue, which I was very conscious about. So what I did to deal with that was to be, as Benny said, I worked extra hard in terms of preparing. I also did not shy away from, speaking up because I had to, because I was there in a representative capacity. And so basically being able to articulate clearly and advocate clearly for our positions was very important in terms of gaining respect, I hope, and ultimately success in persuading other folks around the table to support our position. But one of the other things that I did that I think is really important is to try to connect on a sort of on the sides of the meeting, right? So you're trying to find common interest, or you're trying to get to know that person. So you're personalizing the engagement that you have, so that in some respect you're breaking down any kind of perceptions that they might have about you, because you're humanizing yourself in some respects. And I found that to also be very, very helpful in terms of being able to be successful and get greater credibility when I was making points at the table. And I think there's one other thing too, which you probably have heard tonight. I mean, we all fear failure. I fear failure. I still have dreams about showing up and I didn't study for the class and there's an exam that day. You have them forever. And that's good because it makes you work harder and it keeps you on your toes. And I will say one other thing about, and so not that I think you have to work extra hard as a woman. I think probably for me, I always felt like I just needed to do that anyway. So I didn't really think about it from a gender perspective. But I never wanted to be viewed as a woman. I wanted to be viewed for my work, for the quality of my work, and hopefully the kind of person that I was. But I did want to just make one other point that I think is really critical when you're talking about what's happening in the workforce. I do think things are changing. Part of it is because there are now laws that require, certainly at the board level, more women, certainly for non-executive directors. I sit on the board of a bank, and there are 8 women on that board, and that's actually a pretty good percentage. And then even within the bank, there's a concerted effort to try to develop the bench, so to say, so that you're building up senior ranks and then hopefully giving them the opportunity to create careers that give them opportunities in the boardroom. So I do think a lot of focus and interest is being made in a lot of smart thinking companies about trying to really develop talent within their organizations.
Do we have questions from the audience?
Hi, I have a question. I heard Lauren, Kathy, and Gretchen, you all mentioned about early on in your career you transferred to DC. Did you do that with a job already in line, or did you kind of go there without a plan per se, but just kind of going there to, see what was out there?
Well, I'll start. When I left college without a job. And I thought I want to move to DC for whatever reason I had in my mind, like that's where I was going. So I didn't move there until I had a job. Actually, it was within a couple of weeks. I just started mass applying. I got a couple interviews down there. I just, went to the interviews, and within a month, I actually had a job in DC. And so that's what prompted me to go there.
And then for myself, I did not have a job, no. I taught for a year, I mentioned, and then while I was teaching, I was interviewing for some positions in Boston, but none of those worked out, and my cousin lived in DC. And so I showed up and stepped on her floor for a month and found my first job that way.
And my family lived outside of Annapolis, so it's in the greater metropolitan area. So I was fortunate to be able to move home and then look for a job from home. But I didn't have one when I graduated. It just took a couple of months, and then I was able to find a position.
I think we can't believe that you didn't have this all mapped out and that you went to places where opportunities could find you. Do we have another question?
Yeah. So this is for whomever it resonates with most. We've talked a lot tonight about our successes and our goals, and mentioned how when we fail, we have to move on. But we haven't talked a lot about what that actually looks like. And so my question is, what are some of the toughest obstacles that you've faced, whether that's in your career or personally, however you faced it, and how did you work through it, and how did you find your feet and your forward motion again?
Well, when I was at Penn State and I was applying for jobs, okay, as a psychology major, I mean, really, but I had worked for a bank for 2 summers, and so I had some practical experience. So I thought I was all that because I got all these second interviews at banks for management training programs, and the first one came back and I didn't get it. And I was crushed. I went back to the dorm room. I was lying on the bed. I was just, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was absolutely stunned. And the guy I was dating at the time, which was different than the other guy that we talked about before, came in and he said to me, he said, hey, what's your problem? And I'm like, I didn't get this. And he said, and this is how you react? That you're just lying here? That you're moping and you're feeling sorry for yourself? Really? I thought you were better than that. And he walked out of the room. And it was like a big kick in the butt, which I absolutely needed. And I actually had another job interview the next day, and I'm like, I'm going to get every job offer from now on. And I did. So, but it's just like, a small example. Sometimes you need somebody else to kick you in the butt.
Hey, you get up and move on, right? You get up. I have kids now, and they still need to be fed, and they need to get their clothes on, and they need to have a bath, even though I don't feel good or I don't, So that's a very humbling experience and a good example of how you just keep going, right? And you keep trying, and you learn what you could have done better, and try again, and you're gonna get there.
Yeah, I couldn't emphasize resilience enough, and just understanding that it's not the end of the world. You're not meant to be perfect. Life is going to have its ups and downs again. And I can remember my 3rd year of law school, I sent out, I'm not joking, I think over 1,000 applications for clerkship, which is working for a judge. Extremely competitive positions. And I had maybe 1,000 applications. I got maybe less than 5 interviews. I got 0 job offer. I got 0 clerkship offers. And as those letters came in, they were piling high, and I didn't even open them because I knew what they were. And I just had severe anxiety and severe, crying about I'm a failure, this and that. And it was literally a kick in the butt. Someone saying, get yourself together. So what? This isn't the only thing there is for you. Get up and keep moving. And I think you just keep moving forward. Even if you don't want to, even if you think I'm a failure, what is there? Just think, all right, I don't want to. I know I don't feel like it, but think about it rationally and continue to let your kind of left brain take over and just go forward.
One other thing I mentioned is that I play golf, which I really didn't take up until I learned when I was little, when my dad was forced at gunpoint to watch us on a Saturday in the summer because my mom couldn't stand us anymore. She would take us to the golf course and hand you a 9-iron and tell you to hit balls, and then 20 minutes later he said, go get a Shirley Temple and a cup of chips, and we'd jump in a golf cart and drive around. And so I learned how to play, but didn't really play until actually after I graduated. And one of the great things that I've learned about golf is that it is not a game of perfect, as Bob Rotella, who wrote a book called that. And it's very true. And life is certainly not a game of perfect. And it's not that you hit the bad shot, it's what you do next. And that's it, that you have to keep moving forward. And how are you going to approach this next?
No, I mean, I would just add, I agree with everything that's been said. I think your attitude is really important. Being positive, maintaining an optimistic view. Tomorrow is truly another day, and you never know what it's going to hold for you. And you really have to have that attitude. Not to be too freaky about having daily affirmations, but it helps. Just talking yourself sometimes through the day of what tomorrow's going to be, what kind of person I want to be, I'm going to work harder tomorrow. And these kinds of things, I think, just keep a very positive attitude. And I judge my success every single day. This is even a performance. Did I do okay? Should I work harder? I need to prepare, I've got a big presentation tomorrow. Without being too, hopefully, too OCD about things, but I truly do, think about, in everything I do, what could I do better? And so I don't think that, it's anything to think that, success is, one single thing. It's a lifetime.
I think I would add to that, I'm very much, Kathleen, similar, is constantly reevaluating every experience and owning the experience. And so for me, probably my biggest professional challenge was leaving Senator Specter's office after just 2 years. I mean, it really conceivably is a dream job for many people. He was a senior senator, had a fantastic portfolio of programs, defense appropriations, all of his international affairs legislative work. But it just was not the right fit for me. And really coming to that understanding was trying for me. I had to really evaluate what I wanted to do professionally, what were the skills that I wanted to bring to the table, and what was really the right kind of environment for me. And so I would just say own the experience, learn the lessons at each step of the process. There is a lesson to be learned, each stage, each step of the way. And just manage that and take what you can from each experience.
Here's another question.
Hi. So you all speak of your personal successes that have prompted you towards the positions you hold now as leaders, but I'm kind of wondering, besides just being a woman, what else you have done to create spaces that allow for other women to become leaders? Because I know it's important to have representation, but there's also more that needs to be there as well, because you can't just be a face, you have to, I don't know if I'm being clear, but anyway, if this would resonate with anybody, I would love to hear what you have to say.
One thing I'm very passionate about is women being involved in the conversation as relates to investments in finance. Because in 30 years of working in the investment advisory field, I find that women are often not a part of the conversation, whether they wanted to be or not. And here's the reality, 80% of women are going to be the head of a household, whether they want to be or not. And yet when asked, 90% of women will tell you that they are financially illiterate. And that's a problem. And very passionate about this. And so after I became president at Haverford Trust, well, we had to get through that little financial crisis, and then we started something that we call Speaker Series for Women. And we're in our 6th year. We've had over 1,600 attendees, and we hold different events that are educational, inspirational, or motivational in nature. And it's really a way of engaging women of all ages to become part of that process, to start that dialogue. And it's not necessarily a question in terms of making space for leadership, but again, every opportunity that you can to educate people in one way or another does create those broader opportunities. And that's something that we're doing, and I'm very passionate about.
You participate in things like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You participate in the mentoring program. I have a, 16-person staff, and 14 out of those 16 are women. And we create opportunities for leadership. I run a organization that has lots of flexibility, which allows lots of different types of folks to succeed in my organization, so I think we model good behavior. And I talk about that a lot, in particular about our flexible work environment. I talk about that with lots of people, and that has allowed folks who otherwise wouldn't have been able to succeed because of different challenges they've got in their own personal lives to succeed at VIP, and so I think that's how I do it.
So from a kind of different perspective, I'm a pretty junior person in my law firm, and what I think is somewhat helpful is my law firm is extremely flexible, my practice group in particular, about work-life balance and being flexible with your time for working mothers and understanding the special needs of women. And I think that it's important, maybe as you go into your first jobs, to think about that and what kind of organization you want to look for and work for. And for me, I'm thrilled to be working in the environment that I'm working in, and I think by choosing as an employee and being a good employee for an organization that does promote or does recognize the special maybe situations of women or promotes women, and you see that, that's what you should be really looking for, and that does help create space for you and other women, and tell employers and large organizations this is important to us, we will stick around for it. And likewise, if you have an employer that does not recognize that does not appreciate women, that is not promoting women up the ranks, that's someone that's a place that you should maybe reevaluate whether you would like to work there, and is this something that I want to put my hard effort into when they're not really creating the space that I think should be created for women.
And Morgan wasn't always like that. There was a revolt of women about 15 years ago that said this wasn't the place for us.
Yeah. I can say that I've heard this story that there was this wonderful partner in my practice group, and they wouldn't make the flexible time, and she stood up for herself and said, well, I'm not staying here. And there was a big exodus and big uproar, I would say, from women, and they spoke up for themselves. And now I can only speak to the individual practice group I work in because that's just how law firms are set up, but there's the majority of women associates in my group have young children and are married, and they are just really accommodating to that.
Yeah, and my experience now is largely from a perspective of working within an organization like a bank, where efforts are being made to, as I was saying earlier, to try to help develop opportunities for women within the organization. But also what I do, to be honest with you, I have a lot of younger women that I've either worked with in the past in other roles, or they're the daughters of other former colleagues who say, can you speak to so-and-so? They'd like to hear about your experience. And so even on a very informal basis, I really go out of my way to make time to try to share whatever experience, perspective that they would find of value. And then oftentimes, to the degree that they're trying to, think about networking, trying to think about how I can help them network, and perhaps develop a broader network of other women to continue to maintain, connections with. Because I think that, again, it opens doors, and it oftentimes creates additional opportunities, and it's a support network in many ways too. So you think on an informal basis, making the time to speak to folks who are interested in learning from your experience, I try to do that.
My organization is about 50-50 men and women, and I have to say it's a very positive environment for women, so I feel very fortunate that way, that we have equal opportunities all around, and the leadership teams are all pretty evenly divided between men and women. Just to put a little bit of a different twist on it, so much of my work is based overseas, and that's where I really spend most of my time almost trying to push equal access for women. So in the developing countries in which I'm working, where women really have very limited opportunities. And so my female staff, my women staff members, and I really put an extra emphasis on trying to build up their support and bring professional development opportunities for our field staff. Because I think, it's as an organization in DC, I think we're pretty good about equal opportunities for both men and women.
So Sarah,
your comment makes me realize that we focused on how women distinguish themselves in male-dominated fields. And I'm interested in hearing about the experiences that we might face in female-dominated fields. I was raised by a football coach and a farm woman. We didn't have gender in our house. The only gender we had was competent. If you weren't competent, you didn't eat. And food's important to me. Yeah. And so I think I learned a style of communication that's very direct and very to the point. And then when I joined the dean's office, the vast majority of the staff are female, and I had never been in an all-female office before. And I actually felt like I had to adapt my game to address this environment. So I'm interested in, certainly Sarah and Gretchen, maybe you could speak from your experiences about what are the challenges you might face in a female-dominated field as opposed to the male-dominated fields that we talked about before.
Sure. I think I have really learned over the years, and leadership styles develop, I find, and when I have to interact with different generations, and the older I get and the longer I'm at this, I'm really dealing with lots of different generations than I have not done before. And so leadership styles develop, and an example might be working with millennials, which is definitely true, which is definitely a different kind of leadership style that's required. And so I'm constantly adjusting for those things. For me, it's less, it's really less gender specific. It's less men or women who I'm interacting with, but it's more of a process of constantly building and refining my leadership style. And is it direct communication I need for this individual and this particular moment? Is it another kind of leadership approach or communication style that I need for this particular situation? And that's what I'm constantly adjusting. So it's really less the gender angle for me.
That's interesting. I've been thinking about this since I got the questions about what to say here, because it's, for me, I think, yes, gender has played a part of it, although it's interesting, my board of directors is 75% male and 25% female, and they're my bosses, so that's interesting versus my staff. But most of the other executive directors in my world are women. I found more of the challenge with age than with my gender. That being heard, it can be more challenging because people perceive me as being young and inexperienced and not knowing what I'm talking about, as opposed to I'm a woman who doesn't know what she's talking about. So, and I do know what I'm talking about, at least about poverty and Philadelphia and poverty. So that's, and the way I've adapted with that is really just to develop relationships, to be true to myself, and I have a very I like working with people, so I like talking to folks and figuring out where they're coming from. And again, moving helped with that a lot. You can always figure out some sort of commonality, and that has helped distinguish sort of VIP in the space of public service, but also with other executive directors. So,
we have a question.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I didn't have a question, but I just kind of wanted to say that each of your stories really resonated with me, and I think it's really interesting to see how you really handled yourselves in situations, and it really showed your character. And I don't know, I thought it was really inspiring. So just wanted to say that.
That's amazing.
Hello. I came in late, so I wasn't able to hear the beginning of the panel. But just to go off of what she said, all of what I've heard so far really resonated with me. And I'm kind of in an awkward place because for the longest time I knew what I wanted to do with my life after I graduated from college. But I want to go to law school after I graduate. And I took the LSAT and I didn't do as well as I wanted to. So I'm in this point where I'm just trying to figure out what to do in between that time. And so now I'm looking for a job but I don't know how to, because I have this liberal arts degree that I'm getting, and I don't know how to market myself. I don't know how to go about looking for jobs. So I just wanted to know, how did all of you go about looking for a job after you graduated?
I can particularly, it still like sits with me uncomfortably. I took the LSAT twice. I studied so hard and I did not where I wanted to do the first time at all. And it was a total rude awakening and like, what am I going to do with my life? The best thing I did anyway was to just back up and take some time. I decided to apply for jobs. Well, I worked for a law firm in DC. It buys you some time and it gives you real experience. A lot of employers that are looking at you after law school like to see that you work before law school. I have talked to partners in my law firm that say it's absolutely essential, actually. So that's not a bad, backup by any stretch of the imagination. Especially if you market yourself as someone that's interested in going to law school, law firms understand why you have a liberal arts degree, if that's something you're interested in. Of course, we can talk more about this, individually. But again, for me, what worked was backing up, taking some time off, reevaluating what worked or what didn't work when I didn't do so well in the LSAT, and then just getting back at it and studying on a very, very serious schedule for it. And it paid off. The second time I took it, I did a lot better. I got where I wanted to, and went ahead with the applications from there.
I think also it's really important to identify an employer that you want to be with. And it's okay to take almost any job and get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to know what you want to do. 22 years old, do you have any idea? Something sounds great, and you get in and you find out, oh, that wasn't exactly what I had thought that it was going to be. So getting your foot in the door and doing a really good job, it gives you a lot of options to move around from there.
I'd say come talk to one of us tomorrow. If you've got time in your schedule, and I would imagine the career counselors through the College of Liberal Arts would be also a great resource for you.
Gretchen, I want to follow up on a point that you made. I was intrigued by your story of making lateral moves. And I feel like that's a hard choice for people to say, I'm not going to just move forward. And I heard pieces in all of your stories about times when you said, wow, I'm on this track and it's going somewhere a lot of people want to go. I think I'm going to change tracks. And I think it would be helpful for people as they're facing some of those first changes. How do you make that decision? What is the strategic process in your mind or the intuitive process in your mind as you're making those kinds of what turned out to be really essential career choices?
Right. I was thinking from our last question as well. I mean, I can say this now in hindsight because I've gone through this, and it's much more daunting when you're about to graduate. But we all have had a career path. It's been not a straight trajectory. We've all taken, I think the panelists, different turns and tried different things and had to tack a little bit to find the course. And so I think that's a good perspective to keep in mind. And then it is not always easy. Sometimes I have had to adjust. I would assume that many of us have to do that throughout the course of our careers. And again, for me, it has been trying to own the situation and come to a point where I realize, okay, I'm not waking up every day super enthusiastic. And then, and just evaluating, is this where I want to be at this point in my life? Am I getting out of this job what I want to be doing right now? And if not, how long am I willing to let that happen and let that go on? And if it doesn't change, do I need to switch? Or, what is it working or is it not working? And so it's knowing yourself, it's knowing your skills, it's believing in your passion. I had a few little jobs there in the beginning that I was finding weren't giving me the international experience and focus I wanted. And so I had to really come to grips with that. It meant waiting some tables in between jobs. But you just have to sometimes, pay the price to follow your dreams and do that. And I think I would just emphasize again, as I started, it's really a path, and life is that. Life is it's a long path of many different steps that you take. So I would even view a career that way.
I'm going to ask one question for the panel, they get a sentence each as their parting advice. There's 40,000 students at Penn State. The ones here have distinguished themselves by coming tonight. Some of you work in awfully big organizations. How do we distinguish ourselves from our peers as we aspire to fill leadership roles in our communities and in our workplace? Benny?
By doing things really well, enthusiastically, and it's even the small things. If you do the small things really well, just think what you can do with the big things. And as an employer, I see that. And the people who work for me, and if they don't want to do the little things well, I'm not going to give them anything else to do. Because if they can't do the little thing well, how could they do something bigger well?
Sarah?
Ditto. Plus, be kind to people and remember relationships.
Lauren?
Be confident in who you are and let your personality shine through, because you as an individual, if you're willing to be hardworking and do what's needed of you, just be confident in who you are and your individuality in any organization that you're in, because you'll bring value to them.
Kathy?
I'd say challenge yourself, follow your gut, take calculated risks, and work hard at every single thing you do.
And I would say be a risk taker, because I think that's where you'll find a lot of opportunity.
I'm going to turn the microphone over to Benny to close us down here.
So I just want to say thank you all for coming, and if you want to talk to any of us afterwards, we're here. But we really appreciate you spending this time, and I hope that you'll walk out and say this was a good use of your time. Thank you. Okay.